Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another book review. It is a sweltering hot day here in Seoul, so might only be one book review today. Let's just see how it goes. Anyway, so what if the sharpest critique of today's Korea wasn't coming from literary fiction, but from young adult fiction, YA fiction? So in this video, I will be reviewing the Korean Literature Now volume 53, autumn 2021. And this edition of the Korean Literature Now magazine had a special on Korean YA, Korean young adult fiction, and so these are stories that ditch the adult gaze or the more adult gaze of literary fiction and focus on adolescents grappling with Kkondae culture, inequality, climate anxiety, and just the general right to choose their own path and direction in life. So I'll try and spotlight some recurring themes and issues. And yeah, let's just get going. So hello everyone. I'm sorry, it's really hot here today. So I'm Barry, and this is a Seoul Book Club. And like I said, today I'm reviewing the 2021 autumn edition of Korean Literature Now, and that was volume number 53. And KLN is the long-running quarterly published by the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. It's always a treat. You can actually sign up and get a copy delivered to you every quarter, and it's always worth reading. There's always interesting stuff in it. And the editor in chief is Agnel Joseph, and Joseph and his team, they always deliver really sharp, interesting sort of coverage of Korean literature. They do an excellent job of spotlighting standout books, writers, and big trends, emerging trends. And so this issue was no exception. And the cover article and the special section in this edition were all about Korean young adult literature. Now, in the past on this channel, I've covered adolescent-centered works like Kim Sagwa's Mina, and Kim Sagwa also did Be, Book, and Me. We've also covered things like Anko's Bad Friends and 19. And those things don't really count. Really, do they count as YA? Maybe not in the strictest sense. But the true YA titles that we've discussed include Son Won Pyong's Almond, and I recently did Wizard's Bakery by Gu Byung-mo. Also, I reviewed both Snow Globe Volume 1 and 2. And so you can find I have done several young adult reviews, which you can find on the channel if you're interested. But this issue of Korean Literature Now really helps map the Korean YA landscape in general. It gives a sort of clear overview and just invites you to just to think about how YA is taking shape in Korean writing. And I guess specifically since the 2020s, like since the beginning of the 2020s. And if you're curious about what's happening in YA in Korea, this is a great addition. And you can also find all of these articles and extracts on the KLN website, and I've put a link in the description of the video. So anyway, YA, it's a really big genre, and so in the Western context, I guess YA is a very well established publishing category. I guess generally we think of it as being aimed at readers roughly 12 to 18, something like that. But it really these days, or I guess for quite a long time now, there's just as many adult readers of young adult as there are the sort of ostensible target demographic, right? And so really nowadays, I think it's a genre that's defined less by the age of the reader than by the perspective of the books themselves, right? So the stories are primarily told from a teen's viewpoint most of the time. They often have a heightened or urgent focus on identity, friendship, family, romance, power relations, and just the ability to make your own choices. And I suppose if you're really looking at where young adult came from, I'm sure it has roots, that go quite far back to kind of, maybe juvenile, fiction, and then maybe later the sort of mid-century. Kind of, so there was some sort of kind of young, books about young people, starting from the mid-century. But then I think most critics generally accept that the modern Western YA era really started with S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders, which was famous in Britain anyway for being a book that was. Well, it had a big film adaptation, but it was also the kind of book that was always sort of high school English teachers were fond of this book, and it was often a book that they would assign students. And the film adaptation obviously was huge as well. It had, this whole list of like Patrick Swayze and Tom Cruise and Ralph Macchio, and was Matt Dillon in it as well. But just a huge list of these people that went on to be big names. But the tone of that book sort of ushered in this kind of grittier, more voice driven, like issues kind of focus, sort of like a young adult realism. And then in the sort of 70s and 80s, you had these sort of problem novel, and you had these sort of very big successful series, like Sweet Valley High and The Babysitter's Club. And I can remember several girls from high school reading the Sweet Valley High books. And in particular, I can remember one girl reading them on the school bus. And but they were extremely popular. At the time, they were kind of like, I guess, the twilight of the pre sort of Harry Potter young adult explosion. And then, but in the 90s and I think the 2000s, that's when it really kind of lifted off into being this massive kind of phenomenon. And that was when it sort of expanded more away. The realism aspect of the genre continued, but then there was also fantasy and genre. And so we saw this in, of course, Harry Potter, and then Twilight and Hunger Games. And I think they're the three sort of big, I think they're the three biggest sort of YA franchises, right? And of course, they all had their sort of knockoffs and so on, right? They inspired. So like Hunger Games, just there's been an ongoing wave of this sort of dystopian sort of young adult fiction, right? Since Hunger Games, and then of course there's been all sorts of, I guess, especially since after in the 2010s, there was this increased focus on sort of diversity and these kind of things, and then cross-platform adaptations. And then maybe some people would point to the rise of social media has a big connection with the YA literary scene, sort of BookTube and TikTok. I think is very big with people recommending young adult books, right? And frequently, the style of young adult books are often first person, right? They usually have kind of sort of quick pacing, very heightened emotional stakes. And like I said, although technically marketed to teens, I think these days I wouldn't be surprised if the readership for so-called the young adult books, there was actually more adults, people outside the age bracket, reading these books than there were the actual young adults themselves. Maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And anyway, we're talking about Korean young adult novels. So at the beginning of the KLN magazine, there's an editorial from one of the board members called Kim Mi-jong, and she writes that in the past, many Korean books featured adults' idealized vision of young people. And then goes on to say that there's a growing trend for YA books that reflect and affirm Korean adolescents' experiences from their own viewpoint. So, as opposed to this previous focus on kind of adults' idealized images of young people. And at the same time, a lot of these books are challenging and criticizing the older generations for problems that maybe they're responsible for, things that are going wrong in society that maybe the previous generations are to blame. So what are some of the issues? So there's also an excellent essay about young adult, and it's called Through the Eyes of a Young Adult by Seran O. And Saran uses the framing of the climate crisis and can I say that? And the pandemic, the global pandemic from a few years ago, and and Saran argues that Korean young adult is, again, rejects this adult centric storytelling and reframes adolescence as a kind of as an important in between place. So this is its own perspective. It's not just a way station or a stepping stone to adulthood. And that argues that these stories, they center young people as the agents of their own stories, and that the writers who are writing these books now, they are adopting, they're influenced by digital, the digital era and the rhythms of digital storytelling and digital storytellers. And they use they're inspired by this sort of digital, they have this digital influence to show how teens are sort of pushing back against the inherited norms that maybe older generations want to foist upon them. And that while previously, again, this is what the article argues, that growth used to be the sort of core of the genre, but this now means getting to choose your own path in a sort of uncertain present and in an increasingly uncertain future. And so there's kind of been a bit of a shift. And that shift, though, also resonates with adult readers. So, like I said, and many adult readers recognize in these teen protagonists and characters their own compromises, right? So, of course, we all have to make compromises in our adult lives, and so maybe lots of adult readers are seeing the kind of compromises that they've had to make in these kind of conflicted youngsters who are trying to forge their own path in the world, right? And then the article goes on to highlight sort of exemplary works that are kind of focused on exposing these adult contradictions through adolescent eyes. So Yuwon, I'll come back to this as well in a bit more detail, but Yuwon is about a girl who she confronts someone who rescued her, but is using that as the grounds to exploit her and her family. And then it also mentions Lair for You, and that's about industrialization, like the speed of industrialization on the outskirts of Seoul. And then it mentions a book called I Am Mooney, which is about the concept of family, like what is a normal family. And it also has a storyline about the death of a young delivery worker. And then Sunrye House, which I'll also talk about a bit more, but that's about materialism and some very dysfunctional, status-obsessed parents. And so I'll come back to a couple of those in a minute. But anyway, so what we're seeing in these stories, so according to Osaran, is this blurring of fantasy, science fiction, mystery, horror, romance, martial arts. Even there's a big trend. There's a big strain of martial arts in Korean YA. And then history, sort of Korean history, and this is sometimes mixed with sort of archetypal characters or characters from folk tales or folk heroes or classical tales. An example they give is Hyun Ho-jong's The Struggles of a Girl Fated to Die Young. And I'll mention that one a bit more in a minute too. And so, yeah, also this article underlines this idea that this field is expanding to older readers as well. And then, interestingly, it mentions young adult poetry, which is not something I've really given too much thought to before. And this is, in particular, mentions Kim A. Rand's collection, I Walked Tall. And that collection focuses on sort of marginalized teenagers. And I'll say a bit more about that as well. But overall, so, this article, it's sort of arguing that YA is maybe one of the most sort of socially engaged, maybe even kind of formally adventurous areas in Korean literature at the moment. And Osaran sort of suggests that it might be kind of an antidote to the complacency of older generations, and maybe a kind of a space where some of these writers can reimagine some core ideas of Korean society. So kind of interesting stuff. And we can. Sorry, I need to take a sip of something. Sorry. It really is extremely hot here. Okay, anyway. So yeah, so we can definitely see this theme of criticizing older generations in these stories. So KLN there's 4 excerpts from 3 novels and a poetry collection, and they kind of give this overview of Korean YA literature. And so there's a couple of nice quotes from the article. So these are stories crying out against the outmoded ideas of the previous generation. And they point out how degenerate the older generation is, and consistently criticize the contradictions of Korean society created by the older generation. So it's very challenging, very angry at times, and just generally dissatisfied with the way things are. And actually, so this idea of intergenerational conflict in Korea, it's a very hot topic at the moment. Generally speaking, I guess it's fueled by things like economics, demographics, and culture in general. But younger adults, so like my students at the university, they face a very difficult and uncertain job market. The housing ladder it's basically the previous generations have pulled the housing ladder up behind them. The Korean deposit system is shrinking rapidly. The sort of renting middle ground has been squeezed as well, and of course most assets are just owned by the older generations, right? And at the same time as you have those problems, you also have something else which is obviously talked about a lot, which is the sort of super aged population. And then you combine this with sort of very patchy old age security. And so that keeps lots of seniors working. And then you have these kind of contested wage systems. And all of these things sort of contribute to tensions about taxes and, jobs and pensions. And, there was a survey recently in one of the Korean newspapers. And the survey, I'm not fond of surveys. I mean, surveys are usually not there to reflect public opinion, right? Surveys are used to shape public opinion. But anyway, having said that, there was a survey that said that, many Koreans expect workplace generational conflict to worsen. And we actually have this concept here in Korea called Kkondae. And it's a Korean slang expression for a person who's usually a senior at work, or maybe just an older adult, who's very condescending and rigid, or is obsessed with hierarchy and sort of forcing their opinions on other people. And so this includes sort of lecturing younger people about, not listening to them, or, demanding deferential treatment, and policing language or dress. The sort of classic example is the boss who insists on the young team members going out and for long boozy nights after finishing work, or just dismissing the opinions of younger people. Right? You'll hear people say things like, someone's doing the sort of Kkondae behavior or style or something, or my team leaders being such a Kkondae or something like that, right? But actually, having said that, right, among young people, the bigger split in Korean society might be the gender split, right? I mean, the sort of split between young men and women, between feminism and military service, and just general fairness. So that might be a bigger fault line than the sort of difference between the older generations, maybe. Anyway, let's not get into that. So sorry, back to the extracts from Korean literature now. So the first extract is Baek On-yu's novel Yuwon. And the extract here is translated by Sean Lynn Halbert. And it sets up this very challenging situation. So Yuwon was rescued from a fire. when she was a child by a man who just happened to be passing by. This passerby was a stranger and was injured in the rescue and now walks with a limp. And so obviously, Yuwon and her family are grateful. However, as time passes, this man keeps asking for favors from Yuwon and generally inserts himself into her life. She's now in high school and feels burdened by this middle aged man. And she's been raised to be respectful of older people and to be sort of conscientious of their needs. So it's a very interesting dilemma. How much do you owe the person who saved your life? And it seems like a generational struggle in microcosm. So, this the with the decreasing population in Korea, the burden is on the young generation to support the aging population. But how much do they really owe that older generation? And then we can also see this generational conflict in the next extract, and that's called Sunrye House. That's a novel by Yoon Shil, and translated here by Sandy Juson E. And the summary for the story says it's cleverly mocking and analyzing Korean society's materialism, wealth polarization, and particularly Seoul's real estate problem through the eyes of a teenage protagonist. That teenage protagonist is Oh Soo-rim, who despairs at her conceited, hypocritical, and incompetent parents. Her parents consider themselves intellectuals and think that most types of work are beneath them. They sneer at people who work regular jobs. Of course, they're broke and incapable of looking after their children, and it's left to Surim to cook and organize their lives. And it contains such a clear critique of this older generation, and it seems to say, you lived wrong. The choices you made were wrong, and this is how you should have lived. This is how you should be living. And then in the third excerpt, third extract, that is The Struggles of a Girl Fated to Die Young, and that's by Hyun Ho-jong, translated here by Arcana Madhavan. And this is the story of two 19-year-olds. So we have Soo-jong. Sorry, hold on a second. Oh my goodness, okay. So Soo-jong, and Soo-jong insists that she doesn't want to live so much as she doesn't want to die. And Ian, who says she's heading north to die. And this story is really kind of circling the question of why are these teenagers having to choose between life and death at all? What's happening? What is the situation? So they have a very wary first meeting. So this section of the novel shows these two characters meeting each other for the first time, and Soo-jung's dog. And then they sort of make a friendship through these sort of small acts like sharing rice cakes or making tea together, or making shelter in an abandoned house. And it's almost like they're camping or playing house, but really this seems to be about serious survival. And then, a feral group of children raid their shelter. It turns violent. And so this little section of this story suggests a world where resources are scarce and these kids are living in fear. You don't know exactly what's happening or what's going on, but they're angry. So Soo-jong's very angry. She says, you're not supposed to die at 19. Ian says, someone told me they wished I would die. And so we can see here some of the signature concerns of young adult fiction, right? This sort of a fragile creation of friendship and just a survival, right? Surviving some dangerous situation. And then, like I mentioned, there's also some young adult poetry, which seems to be a newish and an emerging genre. So what are these poems? So we get 5 poems from Kim A. Ran, translated by Agnel Joseph. They're from a collection called I Walked Tall, and they all highlight different sort of critical social issue. So, for example, I'm a 17-year-old delivery boy is about the difficult life of working as a delivery boy and the exploitation he faces in his job. And Kim writes, I thought this gig would be a breeze, but Mr. Kim busted up his shoulder and called it quits. Mr. Park broke his leg and called it quits. Mr. Cha had a concussion and was rushed to the ER. I feel like quitting every day, but I can't. I need the money. And then other poems deal with various different topics, including feminism and teenage parenting. But again, they all show this general dissatisfaction with the way society is set up, the way things are run. Society isn't working for everybody in these stories. And so, what rings out most across this selection is just this very clear sense of condemnation and a desire for change and improvement. And it's an extremely interesting set of stories. And hopefully, we'll get full translation of these novels and collections sometime soon. So, Korean YA really has moved from the margins to the center of the market in the last 5 years, and the genre is now prized for this fast-paced, highly engaging storytelling that welcomes readers from all ages, and these are stories that often translate well across media, right? So film adaptations and musical adaptations and this kind of thing. And so you had these early Korean landmarks such as Wanduk, which was a very popular book here, and then the Wizard Bakery. And these were sort of anchored by teen protagonists and socially relevant plots. And then we've had several film adaptations of YA novels, sort of again just highlighting that these can be kind of franchises. These have sort of big cross media potential. And then one of the other key works is Almond. And that really sort of broadened the audience further. So Almond sold about 1 million copies in Korea, and was famously recommended by one of the BTS guys, translated into about 20 languages, very popular in Japan, very popular in Europe. There's a series called the Cat Moon series, which has had a big cross-generational readership for over a decade. The Dallargut Dream Department Store, that was a crowd-funded ebook, which again became the sort of blockbuster novel when it was published in print form. It's translated into English too. There was a sequel as well. And then Snow Globe, sorry, that was yeah, that's right. Yeah, Snow Globe. So I've reviewed Snow Globe on the channel already. So that is a sort of Hunger Games-ish kind of a story that won the first Changbi X Kakao Page Award. And again, it just sort of shows this sort of developing partnership between traditional publishers. So Changbi is one of the big publishing companies here. And then Kakao Page is a big digital platform, right? And that was a new sort of literary award to try and highlight this new emerging genre. And if we take these developments together, we see a field that's very much expanding in scope and in readership. And like the Western young adult books, Korean young adult books now captivate, just as many adults as teens. And again, this is often attributed to this just general imaginative escape, the sort of consolation that these books seem to offer, the insight that they have, they're often stories that they have to tackle themes of growth and hardship, and then also just have a lot of adventure in them, right? So Korean YA really has surged from sort of niche to central, and young adult is now just embedded in contest guidelines, in series branding, cross-genre titles. We often see blends of other genres, so it includes like all the other genres, so science fiction, fantasy, thrillers, crime, and there's recurring sort of themes of teens confronting the future, shaped by technology, shaped by systems made by previous generations, and sort of trying to reclaim some aspect of their adolescence, right? This sort of in between kind of vantage point that's not just a prelude to adulthood. And a good example of this might be Sinker. And that's a story where teens sink with animals in an ice age world. Or there's another book called Millennial Children that was popular, and that's a satire of child tax regimes and school sort of school district like sorting. And then there's another book which is about where the state raised kids interview prospective parents, right? So again, we see where they're sort of flipping this idea of adult judgment, these kind of provocative kind of little ideas, right? And so anyway, across this boom, we sort of see these kind of these sort of boundary testing stories. So another popular story is the Darwin Young, The Origin of Evil, and that's a sort of crime mystery in a sort of like a segregated society, and that was adapted into a musical. A Thousand Blues, which has just been translated into English, and I think it's been picked up for a film adaptation. Like I think one of the big American companies picked that up for a film adaptation, and that sort of that's about disability and animal cruelty and various other things. There's pandemic stories. There's all sorts of stuff, right? There's Daniel's The Spell to Become a Witch. Park So Young's The Day You Are Here, which is about 7 people sharing a body, and it's about identity, about the economy, about ecology. So really, there's all sorts of kind of interesting things happening. And so there just seems like there's this abundance of new writers. We even see adult fiction adopting teen voices now. We have digital platforms which are just embracing, the sort of marketing potential of these things. But even there is seem to be like one like an overarching if you had to identify the genre, you'd say a lot of these stories are this sort of near future, sort of dystopian-ish kind of stories, right? They're sort of about there's this some kind of dystopian future is just around the corner, and because of some aspect of technology or some social problem that's happening in the world today, and so that's it's getting a little bit sort of maybe a little bit cliched maybe already. But anyway, it's a sort of restless, kind of restlessly creative area at the moment, or at least it seems to be. And then internationally, these titles keep kind of breaking out, especially with English readers. And so there's a few of these lined up for translation this year, next year, and the year after. And Snow Globe, that's the Park So Young's Snow Globe. That was in 2 volumes. That was published in English, and so it's been very popular. It won the Translated YA Book Prize honor in 2025. And oh wait a minute, maybe it didn't actually. Hold on a second. Let me just double check that very, very quickly. And I see there's a book called Snow Globe, and there's another book with a. Yeah. Oh no. Sorry. Oh no. Yeah. Sorry. No, I'm completely wrong. It wasn't the Korean one. Wait a minute. Hold on. Oh yeah. Sorry, it was. Yeah. Translated by Nanette McGuinness. Sorry. Snow Globe. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Snow Globe was. It won the. I'd never heard of this award before, but it won this YA. So again, it's like a newish award for young adult books, right? Anyway, okay. So I'm about to melt. Okay, it's far too hot, and I've got like a big light shining at me as well just now. So it's honestly just ridiculous. So I've probably waffled quite a bit in this. So I apologize if I have. And anyway, let me know if you enjoy Korean young adult fiction. What's your favorite Korean young adult novel? And if you have any recommendations, please let me know. And if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe, ring the bell, and take care. Stay cool, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. So take care. Of the recommended start. Oh, hello, Reaper Hound. Do I have a recommended starter kit for getting into Korean literature? Oh wow, I don't know what to say. A starter kit. I don't have a starter kit for getting into Korean literature. I think just depends what kind of book that you're into. Lots of people get, for a lot of people, I guess the first book, their entry point might have been like The Vegetarian. And then before that, the entry point for some people might have been like Please Look After Mom. These were kind of books that sort of that brought people into Korean literature for the first time. But these days, like especially in the past 2 or 3 years, there's just been an explosion of all so many different genres. Like there's so many like really interesting sci-fi books getting translated. There's all sorts of kind of feminist books getting translated, if that's something you're interested in. And then, yeah, there's lots of horror books that have been translated as well, crime books that have been translated, historical fiction. So if you send me a message with maybe what if there's a specific genre or something, maybe I could I'll make some suggestions. But anyway, thank you for commenting, and take care, and hopefully I'll see you next time. So I'm going to go and cool off now, and maybe I'll try and make some more videos over the weekend. So take care. See you next time.